All right, let's dive on in. So, world's briefest self-introduction. My name is Joshua. Robert is my colleague. I am originally from Hawaii, very, very long time ago, but I've been outside the US now for 20 years. Last 15 based in Asia, currently based in Hong Kong, yay. But last year we did, but actually I spent the most time in Asia I spent living here in Korea. We've got a couple people dialing in from Seoul, which is awesome, wonderful city, best food in the world. We do this training mostly for Fortune 100s around the world, mostly in the finance space, but also a couple of other areas. Last year, we did this in 24 countries worldwide. This year, probably not so many physically, but we're trying to actually go a bit wider virtually. But ultimately today, it's not about us, it's about you guys and answering this core question: how can we switch better from face-to-face to virtual? How can we actually make this work, make this go well, make this a powerful experience? One of the core things that we don't want to do, the really, really big one, and this is from Nilsson and Goodson. It's one of my favorite quotes on the topic. So Dr. Nilsson says, when building online materials, we tend to give more attention to getting the technology right than getting the teaching right, even overlooking strategies we already use face-to-face. What I mean by that is there are all these brilliant facilitators, all of you, who have been training face-to-face often for many, many years. But the moment we switch online, we forget all this stuff that we already knew, which is, slightly tragic. And it's not surprising though. Last year, ATD's State of Education, so this big, meta study they did about learning, only about 10% of classes were live online. This year, it's like 90%. Scott, for example, you did how many in the last 10 weeks? If you could come off mute really quick. How many sessions live online? I know the number, but I just want you to shout it out. Scott's in an aquarium.
Sorry, mate.
There he is.
I'm doing dual screen, so I'm just going, whoa, where's my cursor? So I did 47.
So Scott has been, now last year, did you do 47 sessions online?
Oh, last year, no, I did none.
Exactly. So that's the point we're trying to make here, is this is a big switch for all of us. So the question is, how can we actually do this well? What I'm going to do in just a moment is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. It's your first breakout room. And all I'd like you to do, it's going to be about 9 minutes. So it's a little bit of a deep discussion, about 20 seconds to meet each other. Where are you coming from? What's your interest in this area? What's your experience with this? Have you done 47 sessions like Scott? Or are you absolutely panicking? Somewhere in between. What's the difference between conversion and transformation? So are we converting from face-to-face or online, or are we actually transforming? Okay, debate that. Don't get too philosophical. What do you think? What's your advice? What do we need to keep in mind when moving from live learning to live online learning? I know some people like to call it ILT, so instructor-led training, and VILT, virtual instructor-led training. I prefer LOL simply because it spells out LOL. And I have a really, really boring sense of humor. So live online learning. So what do we need to keep in mind when we're making those moves? What are some of the core prep steps we need to do in terms of our changes? And lastly, what key questions does your group have that you're hoping we can collectively answer here today? I'll be happy to provide some answers, but we're also hoping that you're going to get a lot of answers from this wonderful community we have of, I think, 73 people in the room. I guarantee that we have good answers in this room, even if they're not coming from me. So I get to lean on people when I run out. Daniel Stillman, again, one of my favorite facilitators, he says that at all times, try to be a lazy facilitator if you can. Let the audience, let the participants come on board and actually do a lot in that space. So I'm going to push you into a room. It's going to be 18 rooms. So it's 4 to 5 participants per room that you're going to be in there. Again, I'm going to also put into the chat bar the directions that we've got. So you'll have those for you. That chat bar, when you go into the room, it's going to disappear. But just click at the bottom of the screen and you're going to have this pop up on the screen again. All right. So just putting that out there. Enjoy your breakout rooms. Hope you do enjoy them. Meet some nice people. And I will see you in just a few minutes. When you get stuck, if you do get stuck, feel free to call me to your room and I'll come visit you. Do choose a leader. Whoever's in your room, choose one leader. They're going to have to copy and paste what you've gathered back into the chat when we come back. Okay, good luck. So my hope is, now I'm not going to be able to hear from all 18 groups, of course, but I would like if the leaders can copy and paste it to the chat, some of their key takeaways. Oh, I just got a message. I'm mean with my time. I mean with my time, 10 minutes, 10 minutes for 3 questions. You're right. You could always, and that's actually one of the first points we're going to get to. Everything takes longer virtually. Even something that is a quick little warm-up discussion takes so much longer virtually. It always does, because there's this cognitive leap. When we go from one space, the main plenary space, to the breakout, the reorientation that occurs there takes a couple minutes just to get things warmed up. So the first 1 or 2 minutes, even if you've structured it really well, like specific question, 20 seconds on this task, the reality is it does kind of float around a bit. All right, if anyone else has got it, they can just type it on up there in the side chat bar. And I'm just going to ask a couple people to come off mute just to share what they've got. You don't have to share, you don't have to go through note by note, but just share one takeaway from your group, one takeaway or one key question that your group had from that discussion, okay? I'm just going to call on you based on some of the stuff going on in the chat. Can I call on John Blake? John, can you come off mute real quick and just share one takeaway or one question you've got for the group?
Yeah, so from various corners of the Southern Hemisphere, ideas that we'd love to know is about some of your natural engagement with those that have come on, and some of that social chat and getting to know people, some of the psychosocial hazards that exist online and how we can support that as learners, and how do we get our PowerPoint behind us on a green screen like you, sir?
Oh, so I'll give the short answer now, and then we'll dive on deeper later. Short answer on that it's a virtual background. I just exported my PowerPoint or my Keynote to image, and then just in Zoom, I actually uploaded those as images, and I'm literally clicking from image to image, which is why I don't have fancy transitions. You're seeing all my bullet points as once. Usually I'm really obsessive about that, and I want my bullets to come out as I'm talking about them, but that would mean for every slide, I need like 5 images. And that just gets a bit ridiculous when we're clicking. There are actually something similar to what DJs use, where they have these special hot linked keyboards where you can actually do fancy transitions and stuff. You don't need that. There's something called Manycam, another thing called OBS. That's getting more advanced and high tech. Honestly, all you need is to export to image and use virtual backgrounds. That's the easy way to do it. And it's a good stopgap measure. You can also use Prezi to do overlays, Prezi Video. All this stuff I'm talking about, by the way, if I do go too quickly on some of the tutorial stuff, we have a giant free online course that literally goes through every one of these tools and shows you how to use them step by step, if it's getting a little bit confusing here. So I could also use Prezi. I'm not using Prezi today. One, just to use a different tool, because if you've been in any of my previous sessions, I've used Prezi way too much. Two, Prezi is now working with Zoom 5.0, thank goodness, but I want to make sure it's extremely stable before I make that switch, so I'm giving them a week or two. Psychosocial stuff, which I love that term, basically talk to everyone, comment on everyone's background, just bring that energy. Basically, any natural energy you have as a facilitator, you need to dial it up about 30%. And in terms of that other piece, in terms of what do we need to watch out for, we'll look at that in a moment, because the temptation to multitask is enormous. People drift much faster. We talk about 10-minute check-ins in a face-to-face session. Make it 4 or 5 or 6 minutes max in a virtual session. Speaking of which, I don't want to talk anymore. I want to hear from Tice. You had something interesting. What have you got here? Just share one of your cool things.
Yeah, so you mentioned one of these already, but I think it was a good part of the discussion. Trick is for us getting people involved. That's one. You've mentioned that, but basically the way that you level this out to a way that people are involved to the extent that they're involved, that they're curious about what's happening, but also that they're not getting too annoyed or irritated with the amount of pressure that you put on them, so that they actually will remember your virtual session as one where you're like, okay, this was actually good and I was involved and I realized stuff, but it was not like too obsessive to make sure that I wouldn't, drift off, right? So that balance, I think, is one thing we talked about.
It's a delicate balance as well, Tice. We talk about, so Jan Chipchase in his sessions, he talks about what we call structured and unstructured time. And that need for breathability, that need for balance. We rush far too much in virtual, partially because we're trying to compress everything into like 90 minutes, 2 hours, which is a terrible idea. That's a terrible, terrible idea. But partially we just get nervous. It's much more nerve-wracking if we're having silent time or having people in breakouts than it is to face where we can sort of wander and meander. It's much more nerve-wracking, but that time is necessary time. One wonderful session, it's run by The Desk, which is a collaborative workspace here, which Oscar and Dr. Richard Clayton manage. And they actually have these 20-minute breakouts where you're just discussing 1 or 2 questions. Initially, you might think, oh, it's not going to be possible to fill that time. Oh, you run out of time every single time, even with 20 minutes. This virtual space, if the questions are managed well, if you've got good structures, the amount of depth that the conversation can get to is incredible. As good as face-to-face, if not better sometimes. So I would agree with Tice completely. Let's just go to one last one. Mary Len, could you actually talk about conversion versus transformation? Because I think you've got a good point there. And that was Mary Len Velasco. If you can't come off mute, Mary Len, I do have a backup person. Oh, there we are. Thank you, Mary Len.
Sorry, I struggled for one. Okay. For us, in our discussion, we said that conversion is just mainly like creating or moving all your programs to online without really thinking much of how they really go about it, moving towards online. So for us, if you are transforming your program, it's really like thinking through the structures, the activities, and how you would really convert it in such a way it would still create impact and on when it's moved online. So all the structures, activities are being thought through.
I think, Marilyn, that is actually a perfect synopsis. So full confession, I was using the chat and abusing some of Mary Len's statements because they perfectly lead into what I was going to say next very, very clearly. And this is what we call just transformation basics. One, I would say before even talking about copy pasting transformation versus conversion, go taste more food. If you're a chef and you're good at cooking face-to-face, even if you could take a recipe on how to do something online, but it's way, way, way better to actually go and experience things like this. You're doing this now. You're seeing how I'm running a giant group session, but there are so many free sessions and facilitations and webinars these days. Go to them as a chef would do, going to another restaurant, tasting other people's food. You'll get so many ideas, even from sessions that are medium-ish. You'll still get a lot of ideas on how to do things, how not to do things. I promise you'll learn something new from that. Don't copy paste. Copy paste is conversion. We need to actually transform. That includes our PowerPoint. We can, you'll notice I've got mine in my background here because that way the human is still face-to-face. And again, if I'm super small on the screen, you can make me go big by clicking the speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Speaker view makes me big, but then I've just got the text next to me. Whereas if I was share screening with PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever, I would be a little tiny postage stamp in the corner, and that's just not great for connecting, okay? Time is different. I think that Tice tapped on that really, really well. We need to be both giving more time, but also need to be checking in a lot more frequently. So Louisa, that was a question that was asked. I'm using virtual backgrounds. The text behind me, it's literally an image exported from a PowerPoint and uploaded to Zoom as a virtual background. You'll want a green screen or a high-speed computer to do that. One or the other is fine. As long as you got a green screen, you can do it easily. Ultimately, though, it's not about the tech. It's about what John was saying, which is the psychosocial elements. It's the human side, not the other side. So we've always got to have a plan B to actually make this work, okay? So let's dive on in to what we do before we begin. This is my last slide thing, and I'm actually going to toss you into breakouts again, and we're actually going to start playing with actual outlines. Now, if you didn't bring an outline, that's fine. If just one person has an outline, you'll be able to drag that PDF or that Word document onto the canvas that I'm going to take you to in just a moment. That's another Miro board. If you did play with the Miro board beforehand, it was part of the pre-work, which is awesome. If not, don't worry, someone in your group can help you out there, okay? If nobody in your group brought an outline that you want to play with, we have 3 outlines pre-prepared that we've just taken from publicly available programs. I think one's from like Stanford University, one's from British Council. Nothing super secret. These are things that are publicly available on their websites. Just to show you an example 1-page outline, and we're going to look at how we could potentially convert those. So really moving from face-to-face to virtual. On a macro level, the questions that I want to ask myself are pretty straightforward. I want to step back to my core objectives, and I want to project 6 months into the future. With the objectives my program has, what actual changes am I expecting to occur in the learners' lives because of that? And I know that that sounds like overkill. Like for face-to-face, we're supposed to really concern ourselves about objectives as well. But what we find is that with face-to-face, you can paper over a lot of sloppy outlining. You can get away with things with your charisma in a face-to-face classroom, but online, especially when you're looking at chunk sessions of like 90 minutes here, 90 minutes here, we need to be much more explicit about what do we actually really expect to happen 6 months down the road. And if we're not doing that, our objectives are more topic-oriented rather than action-oriented. Second, with that, when we're looking at these outlines, whatever it might be, what do we actually want to do asynchronously and what do we want to do synchronously? So what do we want to do for pre-work? Not a lot, sadly, people get really busy, but in between work, between module 1 and module 2, we can often get cohorts going with accountability partners and things like that. What do we want to do asynchronously? And ideally, if something can be done asynchronously, then we don't want to spend this time together, this valuable time together, doing it synchronously. I am actually breaking that rule right now. I could have given you a pre-read that actually said, here's the top 5 tips on this, and then we could have had you discuss them. But I'm bearing with it since we've got a large group, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. But with a small group, you know, a training of like 8 to 16 people, you would ideally give this prior, and then in the actual face-to-face, it's much more focused on discussions and feedback rather than on this information download. How many sessions? You really want to think if you got a one-day session, how do you want to break that up? Ideally for one session, a max 3 points in 90 minutes to 2 hours, max like 3 frameworks or job aids that build together and build on each other to really create clear takeaways from that. If it's more than that, they're going to fix it. It's going to break. How many people? Same as face-to-face, not this. Do not try to fit 100 people into your session. It's not going to work. But you know, you can actually create a lot of positive interactivity if you keep it to the same size as class size. And last but not least, I'll show you this in a moment, mixed intensive is a great way to do this. Yes, Scott is doing 1 or 2 day trainings. So there are 2 theories on this. So I saw Scott posted in the sidebar. He's doing 1 or 2 day trainings with lots of breaks. Trainers seem to be breaking down where about 60% are saying, you know, 90 minutes to 2 to 3 hours and then create a space, do it another day. Others are able to do 1 to 2 days where they're just taking lots of breaks. There's 2 philosophies on it. My favorite is actually somewhere in between, Scott. I love something called mixed intensive. Let me just show you an example of what a mixed intensive session breaks down and looks like. And I'm actually going to go full screen and share screen for just 1 second because it'll be much, much easier to see. Share my keynote. So I'm going to disappear into the background for just a moment. So hopefully you can see my workshop flow with the little bits redacted on the screen. If not, come off mute and yell at me and say you can't see it. But hopefully you can see that. So just to give an example, this was originally a 2-day face-to-face program with, of course, some online components. And we've broken it up. There's, yes?
I can see your presenter's view. I'm not seeing like the full slide.
Let me switch it. Thank you.
Yeah.
It just, sometimes it does it the wrong way and it shares the wrong screen.
That's much better. Thank you.
It's one of the only challenge with having a 2-screen monitor with Zoom, which is a great thing to do for managing materials, is sometimes it lies as to which one it's screen sharing. Anyways, that's why you always check. So thank you for that, Jacqueline. I recognized your voice. That was good. So pre-assessment stuff, live online, they're doing 2.5 to 3 hours in the morning as the whole group. So that's the group portion of it. And then the afternoon, they're actually coming back for 1 hour in smaller groups virtually. So let's say I've got 12 people or 16 people in the morning. They're all together doing interactivities, you know, doing group discussions. In the afternoon, it's much more focused on simulation, feedback, and coaching. So it's a mixture of this whole group stuff with this small group stuff. Their actual commitment for the day is anywhere between 3 or 4 hours, even though I, as a trainer, am there for the whole day doing these sessions. That works incredibly well in terms of getting that balance and making sure we have these intimate spaces of smaller groups as well as the larger group dynamics. It's my personal favorite way to break sessions up. I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but at a minimum, do be thinking about how you want to break them up, okay? That's the core idea there. Boink, and stop sharing. So let's actually try this on. Let's actually try this on. Give me 2 seconds and I'm going to pull up the Miro board. Oh, question?
Just really quick, Joshua, this is Robert. Before the breakout rooms, will you put any instructions in the chat box?
Yes, I did. Previously. I definitely will again. I promise I will put the checklist in the box. So I'm going to put the Miro board in the background so that we can all see it. And then I'm going to put the instructions after it. And don't worry and panic about the size of the Miro board. I'm going to give us all a tour of it. It is very simply organized and cleanly organized, and you don't have to do it all at once. But you're going to want to open this up. I've put it in your chat sidebar. That is the Miro board we're all going to go to. So I'll just give everyone a moment to click on that, and then I'm going to actually take over your screens and bring you there. And I'm seeing a bunch of people pop up. This is where I pause and take a breathing moment. Don't be afraid to pause sometimes. Give people a minute or two to transition over. This is where you idly chit-chat and talk to yourself.
Can I talk to you?
I hope so. Yes, I'd love to.
I think I must have missed somewhere when my kid was walking by. Could we have access to this recording?
You will have access to this recording, yes.
Cool.
Now, some of it won't be showing up. Some of the Miro board stuff, you'll see me screen share a bit so you can see elements of it, but some of that won't be showing up. We're not doing a Camtasia for it, but
that's all right.
We're just, the core stuff will be there. You bet.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I would love to learn how you dress to be able to because a lot of people, when they do these online sessions, they look like me right now in the morning. So I need to design.
Well,
I need to design that aspect.
No hair. It hopes that I have no hair and wear hats.
I love that. I love the color combination. So it works with your slides as well.
I have obsessions about colors. I'm designing to blend in. It's just like Robert blends in with his iceberg when he does that. All right, everyone should hopefully be over there. If you're not, let me give you a tour of it. Just really, really quickly, give you a short little tour of where we're going over there. Bump, bump, bump. So, wow, look at all that. There's a lot of people on the screen, and it's huge. So you can see this is a big old screen with a lot of, look at all those people. I'm going to hide those people so you don't see them. That's just my little hide my collaborators cursors. So show it. Wow. Hide it. So this is big, but it's actually fairly simply organized. These are all groups. There are actually 24 groups. We don't need that. That's in case we have max. They're all labeled. Yes, thank you for bringing me somewhere. Yeah, please do not be clicking on too many things for just one moment. So let me just give you a quick tour. If anyone gets stuck and has questions, you can stick them here in the middle. I actually have very, very clearly put go-to things to go to your group areas. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to A. They just click on there. So you've got, look here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you need to get back to the middle, just click on the arrow and it goes back to that middle again. You know what I just realized I should have done? I had it before. B is 5, 6, 7, 8. I probably should have the numbers underneath it. This is how, it's an iterative process. We're always learning, okay? But you get the idea. C is 9, 10, 11, 12. D, 13, 14, 15, 16. Basically, how do you know which one to go to? When you go to your breakout room, at the top of the breakout room, it's gonna have a number. You're going to go to that circle. You're going to go to that circle. And what I want you to do in that circle is very simple. Let's say I'm in group 4. I don't need everything. I do not need everything. I just want to go to the first part here, what we would call the before part. By the way, this is a PDF. You can actually click on the download and download a copy of it if you just like the PDF. This is the whole checklist. I only want you to be focused on the first part of this. I only want you to be focused on the first part of this. And so let me just copy and paste that over, making sure you got a copy of it. And that's, again, 6 months in the future. What are the actual objectives? What should we do synchronously, asynchronously? How many sessions should we have? Like if it's a 1-day program, 2-day program, how should we break it up? Do we want to use mixed intensive? Do we want to do all 2 days and just have a lot of breaks? How many people do we actually recommend? How do you welcome them? Meaning before the session, what are the technical things you need to do? What are the expectations to set? How do you motivate them? You guys have already seen this. Hopefully, if you got my welcome email, which had a video in it and it had all that kind of stuff. We also do have in our free online self-paced class, there's a whole bunch of tutorials on how to do those videos, how to do all that kind of stuff. And lastly, connective, how do you actually bridge to the next module? So when the session's done, or how do you bridge back to work? I like to think of this as sort of a sandwich. What do I do before and what do I do after? I actually like to think of those first before I even deal with what goes in the middle. So I know what I'm being bookended by. Some people like to do the connective bit later. I personally like to start with where am I beginning and where would I like to get to and how do I sort of look at those ends before I think about what might go in the middle, okay? What's gonna happen now is I'm going to have you go to your breakout rooms. You're going to find your way to your corner, okay? Find your way to your corner. And in your group, you got some sticky notes here. Feel free to just grab them. So just grab a sticky note. If you don't like these sticky notes, especially those who played with Miro before, you can also create more sticky notes. Just click here, whatever color you want. Click it here, okay? And all I want you to do is on 1 or 2 sticky notes, I'd like you to just put some notes, about the answers to section 1. Just your thoughts. Now, what are we applying this to? You can either be applying this to one of your own programs, if somebody in your group has a program they'd like to use, or if you're stuck, you can use one of the 3 programs we've got up here. Again, these are PDFs. All you need to do is click on the download button to download a copy, because I don't expect you to have to zoom into that. Or if you're worried, you can always just make it bigger. I haven't locked them. You can actually zoom into them. Don't try to deal with all 3 days. Just choose one of the days and play around with it. This one is negotiations. This one is high impact leadership. And someone's decided to draw on the screen right now. That's fine. I'm going to just clear that. It doesn't matter. So someone's annotating. That's fine. And this one is around influencing. Oh, yes. Thank you for the heart. I appreciate that. The moment I stop sharing, it'll clear the annotations. So is that clear what we're doing? Section 1, you can either use the things I've given and put your thoughts on that, or you can drag a PDF or drag a doc into the window and it will automatically upload your document for your group to do. You will probably need to resize it then. That's a little more complex. But if you've got a real one, I encourage you to do that. Before we begin, are there any questions on what I'm asking you guys to do?
Joshua, there's something called keys on the right-hand side of those Post-it notes. What do they say?
Ignore anything about that. Great question, Jacqueline. So it's great question. Let me share the screen again. That's the one thing I should have made super clear. Thank you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline is my conscience. So ignore this stuff. So you can use these stickies. Feel free to use them, or feel free to actually just create some new stickies. Sorry, group 4, I made a mess of your place. This stuff here has to do with something we'll be doing later, including this nice little grid here. Ignore this grid. Ignore these key things. It's something we'll be working on later. Just like you can also ignore step 2, step 3, and step 4. Feel free to look at them, but we just really want you to focus on step 1 for about the next 10, 15 minutes.
And so when we fill up those sticky notes, where do we plonk them?
Just literally plunk them around your 4, anywhere you'd like, anywhere in your circle that you're comfortable with doing it. And for example, if you're not using this one, feel free to delete it. So basically, this is your circle, this is your space. Have some fun with it.
Okay, thank you.
Joshua, pedantic question. If I was in group 8, I got to circle 8, right?
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. It's very possible that 1 or 2 people might be reshuffled. So do look at the top of your board. For example, if someone got logged out and logged back in, sometimes I have to move them to a different group. But in general, I'm going to be sending you back to the same group rather than reshuffling you, because you've already broken the ice and gotten to know these people. So it'll make it faster for this. All right. Make sense?
So you say look at the top of my board. There's what am I looking at?
Nothing right now. You're looking at nothing right now. When you're in the breakout room, good question. When you're in the breakout room, it'll say at the top, breakout room 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's telling you where to go.
And what do we do now with these sticky notes? Nothing just yet. We're just familiarizing ourselves with it.
So you're going to go in and you're going to be answering the first section of questions on a sticky note.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Just the first section on that nice little prep sheet, just the first section, the same thing that we just covered in the slide we did. I'm also going to just right now, very, very quickly, I'm going to put it into the chat sidebar, just so you are clear on the exact section that we want you to be focusing on. And again, you can use one of your real cases, or if you prefer, you can use one of the cases that I have just pre-populated it with, all right? So let me just put this up here. So I'm not sending a private message. I'm sending it to everyone. Again, that's in the chat sidebar. Let me go to the breakout rooms. I think everybody is assigned to a breakout room. All right.
Can we do this in the mobile phone?
Kind of. Yeah, you're going to be switching back and forth. Oh yeah, I'll put the Miro board back in the chat as well, Scott. I'll put that back there again. In case anybody lost the Miro board, I'm going to put it back in the chat again. You can kind of do it on a mobile phone. It is less than ideal on a mobile phone. We recommend people have a desktop or a tablet, or 2 mobile phones is also fine if you want to do it on that. There is a Miro app. Doing it on a single mobile phone works, but it's just trickier. You're switching back and forth all the time. What I recommend then is actually have one of your partners in your Zoom breakout room screen share it so that you can see and contribute to it, rather than having to deal with multiple devices. Okay? All right, I'm going to send you to your rooms, and you are going to have about 10, 15 minutes to work on this. Suchita, did you have a question before I send you to your rooms? I saw a hand raised, that's why I'm asking.
So I have a question, Joshua.
Yes.
I am a bad student. I log in on my phone, but I'm on Miro. I'm on Miro on my laptop.
Perfect.
So I can
that's fine.
see both at the same time. So
not a problem. You're set then.
Would you recommend this when I teach my own courses? Should I say, okay, log into Zoom so that you can see me, but let's do the work on your laptop?
On your laptop or on a second device or on a tablet. That's usually what we recommend.
Okay.
No more than 2 spaces though. That's one of the big principles of converting from face-to-face to virtual. We don't want to use more than 2 spaces, but I do actually encourage people to go beyond the Zoom. This is great for creating visible thinking. It's great for actually having a shared space where we can have persistent knowledge creation and knowledge sharing if we want to move from group to group. Yes, technically you can do this, and I'm just gonna, Robert, could you mute everybody? Yes, technically you can do this. Thank you. Yes.
I think he muted you as well.
He muted me as well. That's awesome. That's good. I didn't know it muted the host as well. My God, that's a bit vicious. But good to know that Robert can shut me up if he wants to. So you could do this without having a Canvas, but the Canvas really does take people from beyond a traditional meeting into a much more engaging space. We'll look at this more deeply on the Thursday and Friday session, but suffice it to say, I strongly recommend these 2 things, Zoom plus some sort of Canvas, even a simpler one like Jamboard is great, just having a space where you can have that kind of collaborative thought. Cool? We're going to our rooms.
Thank you so much.
You've got your time. If you don't finish everything, don't feel rushed. Don't feel too rushed. We're just going to get as far as we can. We don't like to rush things. I am giving you 14 minutes. So you will run out of time, but do what you can. Play around with it. That's the goal, to at least try some of these things on. All right. Good luck. So coming back from the groups, I guarantee that everybody ran out of time. Why? Because the reality is it takes more than 15 minutes to prep a class. Shock and awe. That's not surprising. So please don't panic. Don't get all stressed out about it. Our goal today is just to get an awareness of what we would like to be applying and to begin thinking about it in a conscious way. It's not to complete actually converting a class in 90 minutes. Learning about converting a class and actually converting a class in 90 minutes, that's a little bit unrealistic. But what we're trying to do is create an awareness of the frameworks and give you a chance to take a look at an actual session on how you might actually convert it. What I'd actually like to do now, before we jump on a little bit deeper into this, is I'd actually like to see if there's any 1 or 2 hands that want to raise up takeaways that you have from your group, other than it's really, really fun, as EG's got here. It took us 15 minutes to figure out how to move Post-its. And that is why, and that's going to be, we talk about the welcoming. So this, by the way, this is a fun welcome. This is one organization. They actually literally send a virtual campfire kit to people. It's got a marshmallow, a match, a candle. So they make little mini s'mores for one of their team building activities. But we want to welcome people in 3 ways. Technically, that's the onboarding. I sent everyone a Miro Canvas link beforehand. If this was a small group session, like a normal session we would do with 12 to 16 people, there would be 12 to 16 squares where they're doing some pre-work things, answering a couple of questions so that I know who's done it and who hasn't done it. So Gerald, for a brainstorming session on one topic, usually 15 to 20 minutes, if they know how to use the tools. With this group, I can see from the pre-work that not everyone has played with Miro yet. Clearly, I did not. That's fine, EG. Don't worry. This is a learning experience. This is why this is a learning lab. But in a real session, you could actually tell before who was coming in because they'd have their names on there. So this, how do I place a sticky? How do I do that? That's actually something that Bob covered last night in Zoom Basics. We're not covering that today because it's assumed that you would do that as part of the pre-work.
Sure.
And I think that that's a reasonable expectation to have 12 people get on there. You can tell who didn't do it. Gerald, you got a question.
Yes, I do. I was just curious over what you did to Miro in the from the moment you started answering to Nazrin till this moment in time. Did you do anything to the Miro board? Because I just got my annotation powers back.
No, I haven't touched it.
Okay.
I genuinely don't know, Gerald. So in Miro, it's not as fine grained. It's everything on or everything off.
Got it.
I have it so basically if one of you can edit, it means all of you can edit. So it's, I truly don't know why I'm not going to lie and come up with an answer here. I don't know.
No
why
worries.
you couldn't
No
do it
worries.
5 minutes ago. I've got no idea on that.
No
Anyone
worries.
else, a takeaway or a question? Takeaway or a question? Just raise your hand. Use the.
To ask.
Yes, yes, Jewel.
Yeah. Jewel, actually. Okay,
Jewel,
so yeah, I think my group had some fun using the platform. So we took a bit of time to figure out how to move post-its also. But after a while, we got the hang of it. So I think we like the fact that it was a concurrent sharing over Zoom, and at the same time, we could see their thoughts being recorded down to the post-its. So one question I'd like to ask, right, is there a way where we can see who's writing what? Because for now, everything is tagged as participant 456, right? Is there a way where we could like log in with our,
yes.
I'm not sure.
So there's actually 2 ways to do it. One is to actually have people do a login. We try to minimize the number of logins people have to do, just because every single login increases cognitive load. 2, you can actually, so when you come in, it gives you guest architect, guest designer. You can actually have people rename themselves in the chat with Joshua architect, Joshua designer, so that you actually know who they are when they're moving around. And then if you actually click on the arrow that's at the top of the Miro, you're actually able to see where people are moving around. So that's usually the easiest way to do that on that. But the point being, as someone mentioned it well, is you want to set up the breakouts really well. Teresa said this very clearly. Notice I brought you to the same breakouts with the same group because you'd already gotten to know each other. Now, what I could do if this was a longer session diving deep on this, I could have actually had one leader, someone self-select themselves as a leader in the group and actually then move them. So I could actually either use the co-host trick and have them move themselves, or I could actually, as the breakout scrum master, whatever, I could actually move them to another group and effectively create a world cafe rotation. So if Steve was the leader of his group, I would move him from group 15 to 16. And then that would be his new group. He would actually bring them to his board and they could continue diving deeper into the exact same material. So that's a very controlled way to move people from group to group without too much effort. Any other takeaways or questions to share? So I hope you're really thinking about this idea. How do we actually welcome them? Technical, it's incredibly obvious now why a technical onboarding is so important. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh God, I'm just going to use Zoom. I'm just not going to even use a board. I want to encourage you, especially when you've got smaller groups, boards are amazing for having these breakout spaces. Yes, your Zoom rooms do have whiteboards. Yes, they can screen share, copy, they can download them and bring them back. It's just not the same. Like there's so many things we can have people do with the breakout rooms using this shared space. Like for example, what I could say is, all right, all of you go back in there. I want you to go look at the next group's board. Don't talk to them, just go look at the notes they have. And I want you to come up with 3 questions you have for them. And that's incredibly easy to do in a Miro, and it's something that's not possible in a Zoom. So there's just all these ways of doing visible thinking that aren't possible. On Thursday, when we're talking about visible thinking with Project Zero and liberating structures, the session I'm doing then, we'll dive deeper into that, but this is just one reason why. But ultimately, how do you welcome them from in terms of expectations, participants, not passengers? How do you connect with them? You know, I show a video in my welcomes always because I want to set that tone already. And also just how do you get them ready? Okay. Diving deeper, how do you bridge the next module? But then ultimately, how do you plan for your session? At a minimum, you also want to think about how do you start at the very beginning. Sunita, I'm feeling a little challenge using Miro. That's normal. And this is why technical onboarding is so incredibly critical. If the first time your participants is using Miro is in the session, it will fail. Straight up. It's a terrible idea. Why? Because they feel that, that not only does it take time, but there's that shame factor of, oh, I don't know how to do this. And if there's that, I don't know how to do this, it goes to this tool is bad and this session is bad. Instantly the brain pivots. But if you have that technical onboarding first, where you have that Miro canvas that's open and let them play with it, and especially if you're checking in to make sure that everyone's actually done it. Apologies with 123 people. I did not check in and make sure that all of you did it. I know some of you did. But if you've done that, then that shame turns to pride because they're like, oh, I get this. Because you've given them about 10 to 15 minutes. And usually what we'll do is we actually have Robert's tutorial video, which shows people how to use the Miro. And that was actually sent to you in the Miro in the email as well. It's just a 4-minute little clip that walks you through the features. Then we actually have them try it out. And only then does the session begin. If you're really worried about it, schedule a pre-call with your client. Have a 15-minute pre-call where they literally just come in and you're just walking them through playing with the tools. Oh, EG, yes, it is your responsibility. But trust me, if you've got a group of 16 executives, it is good to check in and make sure they've done their homework because a lot of people won't. Yeah. Any other questions, comments before we dive on deeper? I'd like to actually hear, does anyone have an idea of what their starting ritual is here? I always show up 15 minutes early. That's always a good starting point. My starting ritual, as you saw, I have people doing different things. You could have them change their names to be where they're dialing in from. Interpretive Tance, thank you, EG. That's a great way to do it. Sometimes actually though, I do actually have people getting physical in the opening. I'll have people, if it's a smaller group, you know, I had you do the little high five thing. That's minimal for 100 people. But have people, okay, if you agree with this, stand up. Go find something in the room that's a significant object to you, bring it up, and literally in their breakout rooms, they'll do show and tell. If you can get people doing things physically, it's much, much, much more meaningful, and it gets them to create a gap between their previous meeting and this one. People are going from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom, or from waking up to the Zoom. You have to create a mental, physical break to create a new space that your session's going to be. If you don't have that welcoming ritual, it falls apart. Someone asked, would you say Mural is better? No, I personally prefer Miro. It has one feature I want to steal from Mural, but I think Miro is more aesthetically pleasing and easier to use. With the one glaring flaw, it doesn't have the fine-grained ability to lock things as well, but that's not a problem with a smaller group. Mural is also fantastic though, and the price is the same essentially. It's like a $2 difference. So it's a non-issue there. So that's that. Anyone else have a welcoming ritual that they'd like to come off mute and share with the group? How do you welcome people? Any other tips and tricks?
Hi, Josh. Just one real small one. I just, why people, because people come in different times, so I often just ask them to write into the chat, you know, change your name and all that sort of stuff, put where you're from or some interesting holiday destination you'd like to go to. But I often ask them to put in the chat how they're feeling right now, but connect that with the last thing they ate. So you might end up with excited banana bread, and it's quite amusing.
I love that. I love that. Well, it touches into the human and the emotional. It just gets people centered. You don't want it to be, we don't want it to be necessarily too random, but we just want to create a sense of play as well. And yeah, John does make a note. If people are, yeah, don't jump off your office chairs too much, but just find a way to onboard them, to bring them into the space. Tired Pop-Tart. Thank you, EG. That is the greatest description ever. EG is a tired Pop-Tart. It's like, what is your secret band name? Your last name plus XYZ, whatever. All right.
Joshua, may I ask a question?
You bet.
It's to do with the part of the discussion we were having in our group, which is our expectation is just because we set work, it doesn't mean it happens. The point you made earlier on about us not learning about Miro beforehand. And sometimes we build in pre-work before, and you rely on people doing that in order to link into it in the session. And then you come to the session, and of course, you know, half your group haven't done the pre-work. So how do you handle that?
Honest answer is we have close to 90% with our sessions. We have 90 to 100% pre-work completion with that because of the canvas. Because we're using a Miro canvas where it's so visible, it's publicly that they're doing it. We can see it. We can have them nudge each other on it. And also with a lot of our clients, it's the entry ticket. So there's the carrot and the stick. There's the positive side to it. So it's not wasted. So you guys were just playing with the Miro as your pre-work here, but normally we'd actually have a couple of key questions there. And then in your first breakout, you would go to that same Miro, use that to introduce each other, and use that to have a discussion built in there. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of that, we actually, with our clients, we have a very simple one that if they didn't do it, they're not coming to the session. It's their entry ticket, and their managers know. Now, I know that's a bit of a stick, and I know some people don't like to do that. So feel free to take that with a grain of salt. But it's a conscious conversation. It's disrespectful, not to me, but to the other learners if they've all done their work and you haven't. At the same time, manage expectations. People are crazy busy and stressed now, so don't give them 3 hours of pre-work. All of our pre-work is designed to take maximum 15 minutes. And the way we put it, we think that 15 minutes is a reasonable commitment, not to me, but to yourself and to the other people who will be joining and expecting you've done it to actually participate in a virtual session. And if they can't commit 15 minutes, then really that's setting the tone of how they're going to behave in the program. So that's just an expectation we strongly put out there. Don't worry, EG, we love your giant table 16 and how large it's become on the Miro board. All right, let me dive a little bit deeper into this. I recognize that our time is getting short. I just want to talk a little bit about in-session stuff. Just very briefly, some of our top tips. And again, if I've become small, feel free to hit speaker view in the upper right-hand corner. I'll get big. If you're planning 90 minutes, now 2 hours is my favorite duration, but if you're planning for 90 minutes, plan for 70. Don't ever plan for 90 minutes. It'll never, ever work. Plan for 70, the rest is flex time. In terms of the order, I actually like to plan my trainer talk first because that keeps you honest. It keeps you from taking up too many of those boxes, all right? Then I like to plan for the reflective pieces. Where are people going to be actually getting to breathe, to take their own notes, to think to themselves? We need to build in that time for self-reflection critically. Then I map out my debriefs. Then the prep time, like if they're prepping for a simulation activity, and only then do I actually slide the activities into my plan. 9 times out of 10, what I'm going to find is I'm out of time. It means that I haven't really been honest. When you start with activities, you try to shovel in, oh, there's a 2-minute debrief here. Oh, and I've got 2 minutes for prep here. It never works. So we actually like to time box this. And this is actually what we had on the big screen. I'm not going to jump over to this right now, but I'll show you it. Oh, let me just give me 2 seconds. Pop this on up here. Going to our beautiful, beautiful mural here. Yeah, I do love groups. Thank you, group 16. That is absolutely gorgeous. But let's go to a group, an untouched one. So if we were going on here, we've got our 16 boxes that are going on here. And by the way, there's a nice feature on this. I can actually gather you all to me. So I can actually, I can bring you to me, bring everyone to me. And it just instantly brings you all to where I am hanging out. So that's the nice little summon. Mural has that as well, called summoning. But I think about what are the solo activities they're doing by themselves, whether that's reflective, what's being done in plenary. Now by plenary, I mean active plenary discussion, not trainer talk. What's a group activity? What's a pair activity? And then miscellaneous types of things. What are they? And then I've got my 90 minutes here. Now, if I wanted 2 hours, I could map it out here, but I want to map it out clearly so that I'm not getting ahead of myself and I'm keeping myself really honest about how long things will take, okay? Again, you wanna leave probably 2 rows open and keep those as breathing room, so leaving gaps between them, but taking the different activities and then putting them on into here. That's what I would suggest doing there. Now, we're gonna run out of time for that in a moment, but I just wanna make sure that I touch on the last thing. But really be thinking with these sticking notes, each one of these is a time box. How do you open the box? What's the purpose of this box? How do you make that clear? What tools are you using? What action? What emotions or feelings are associated with that section of the session? And most importantly, last little piece here is how do you actually transition and carry it forward? This is for me one of the single most critical things is how do you take what's been done and carry it back to the room, connect it with what other groups are doing. So it's not just box and forget, box and forget. That happens so often in virtual sessions is we're just doing box and forget. So that's what's really, I don't see plenary in your rough plan. Is that the then activities portion? Sorry, Teresa, could you come off mute and we'll receive the slides. Yes, you'll receive the slides and everything, promise.
Yeah, because you mentioned the Joshua plenary, but in the slide right before this, that's flashed behind you, where you say trainer talk first, then reflective, then debrief, then prep, etc.
Oh, so that's large group plenary work. So I consider I just like to separate it out. So on the stickies, I tend to separate it out a little bit more, just because it's, whole group work in the plenary format, as opposed to group work. That could be a 1, 2, 4 all, liberating structure style. It just depends how I want to break it out. And of course, if it's like a simulation under miscellaneous, that could stretch across 3 boxes. It's not necessarily every simulation should be 5 minutes long. That's madness. But, however time you want to actually map it out, making sure that you do it there. Okay, if that actually makes sense. The last thing I want to show you is actually the takeaway document that we're giving you, and you can download this right off the Miro board if you would like. It is the nice little PDF that you can download off there. And again, because I know people are going to kick off in a minute, I will be sticking around for another half an hour to answer questions about this. This is the nice little takeaway document here. After you've done this, so you've got your before session, thinking really about how you want to make this work. You've got your session planning itself, diving into the details of the stickies, and then it's really just 10 things that you're checking, 10 very simple things that you're checking. And really what you're checking, just to go through the list really quick, and that's exactly the kind of trainer talk that we recommend not doing. So do as I say, not as I do. But jumping on in, those 10 core things that we are trying to do, and of course it's switched back over again. It's, how do you move?
Josh, you're showing your
different monitor. Switched again.
Yeah.
It always does
much
that
better.
every single time. Every single time. So how do you move virtually? Make it easy for them. I do the mom and dad test. Basically, I test my dad. My mom actually is a tech whiz. She was a tech admin at Bowdoin College, so she's got it. But I tested with my dad. My dad is of the level where he's like, I am emailing now. If it's easy for him to do, then I know it's going to work with my learners. And of course, I try to get this in the tech prep earlier. When do they move physically? I want to include physical movement sometime in here. That includes analog things like having them physically hold things up to the screen. When and how do I gather their concerns, their ideas? If I'm not surfacing their mental models, I'm only actually bringing half of the ingredients into the puzzle. It's just my ideas, not their stuff. This is part of the reason why we do the visible canvas. Ultimately, when do I let them take over? How do I honor their expertise, let them present back? How do I actually get them mingling with other groups and let them co-create things and ideas together? How do I make it fun, emotionally and intellectually engaging? And when do I actually gamify, if I do, using spinners and things like that? That's the first 5, super critical. Last 5, where and how do I check in? Basically, check the temperature. Says store often, that should say stir often. I have a typo in my slide, awesome. How do they demonstrate understanding and step forwards to competency? How do you make the thinking visible? The Miro canvas is one of the ways we do it on that. How do we capture what's going on in the group? There's a lot of ways. I can visit them. You can have them report back. You can actually have them do rotations and steal things from other groups. But also what I love to do is I embed a type form or a Mentimeter right in the Miro board. That's something we'll be looking at on Friday if anyone's around for that session. And you can actually have them type it up in there so that it aggregates it. So in the Miro board, there'll be like point 1, point 2, point 3, question 1, question 2, question 3. And in the actual type form, there's a place where they can type that in. That automatically gets shot to me as a trainer where I can look at aggregate about how all the things are sticking together. Where are your reflective bits? How do they check into the job? But ultimately, what's the story and how do I make it their story? This is the huge thing that we're trying to really do, is try to convert it from being my story to their story. And the easiest way to do that is in their breakouts, make sure you're using clear story prompts. Basically, the short answer is make your questions more interesting. Not just knowledge-based questions, but really, what does this look like in your world? What are examples of this? The more you can create the atmosphere of people gathering around a campfire in your breakout rooms, the more meaningful the experience is going to become in terms of how people are working. So that really is the core things that we wanted to look at and cover here today. I'm happy to stick around for half an hour. Otherwise, I do want to say a big thank you. I know we took a little extra time with the Miro than I was anticipating. That's a good learning for me today, but no worries. Can I just get a big wave to everybody on the screen? Just before we head on out, we're just secretly doing a photo of that. It's always good fun. But with that, it is 10 o'clock. I do want to let people who've got to go head on off. You will get a copy of this video as well as the slides, and the Miro board will remain open for a while. We also do have a couple other sessions where we dive deeper into all these things over the next couple of days. But this is just really looking at our framework, which is all on that one-page planning sheet of how we actually think about converting something to virtual. If you go through those steps, you'll be halfway there, as long as you remember to iterate, iterate, and iterate some more.
Thank you so much, Joshua, and everyone.
Thank
It's been
you.
rich learning session. See you again soon.
Thanks,
See you
everybody.
again. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm
See you
sticking
guys
around for
around.
anybody who's got questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice wings. Nice wings, Josh.
Bye,
Thank you.
Tracy.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
Josh.
Cheers, Josh. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye, Gerald.
Bye.
Yes, Anand, we have a video of the first session that will also be going up soon. They'll be all going out. You'll be getting an email. Everyone who's registered will get an email with all the videos we've got. Not every session is perfectly videoed when we're spending more time on the boards, but you'll at least get a sense of it.
Josh, can you do me a favor? There was a lovely quote you shared right at the beginning about focusing on
The Nielsen
technology.
quote. Yeah, absolutely. I'll put that in the chat. You're also going to get a copy. The slides will also be up there. But yeah, let me just copy that quote into the chat because it's a lovely one. I interviewed Dr. Linda Nielsen last week. It is already in our free program that we've got, which is available. You'll get an invitation to that. So we have our toolkit, our book, and a free online course that dives deeper into all of these things. Emphasis on the word free. In the follow-up email, do look for it. You can get all of that. Or if you want, Robert, can you just put the Knowmium toolkit link in this chat bar? So Robert will put that in there. But one of the things that's on the, it will be on YouTube and LinkedIn shortly, but it's already in the course, is the interview with Dr. Nielsen, who the quote is from. She's an amazing researcher. Probably the best, in my opinion, her book, which is Online Learning at its Best, live online teaching at its best. Yes, there's my brain. So she wrote Teaching at its Best, but she also wrote Teaching Online or Online Teaching at its Best, one or the other. Her book with Nielsen and Goodson is by far the best from a research perspective. There's a lot of practical books, but what she does is they do a great meta study of what are the evidence-based practices in terms of what actually works online. So she's fantastic.
Hi, Joshua. I have a question here.
Yes, E.G.
Right, Hannah.
Oh, sorry. I saw two people off mute and two mouths moving.
I'm
Sorry
going to put
about
my
that.
phone
Yes.
back on. I'll catch up in a minute.
Sorry, Raihan. Yes, Raihana. Apologies. Yes.
All right. Okay. I'm also first and foremost, thank you for the generous sharing. I think I have a lot of insights, and I agree with the quote that you have to emphasize on learning, and that is why I intend to only use one platform, that is Zoom, and you know, to engage, because I think from the first time I started is Zoom. So would it be okay, like, you know, if I have my clients who are more comfortable with MS Team and all, and I just say that, no, I am only familiarized and I'm only using Zoom, and turn that offer down? I mean, like technically, like ethically, is it okay just to say that?
It's very tempting to say that. So the way I would put it is, I nudge my clients. If possible, we get them on Zoom because it provides a lot more features. And it just works way better, just way, way, way better. And especially if there's security issues with that, we ask, well, can they use their personal devices? Because that's often a workaround. But it's like face-to-face training. We have all trained in hotel banquet rooms with poor lighting, bad projectors, terrible tablecloths, slightly aromatic rooms, to say the least, and we've made it work. Here. We've made it work. That being said, it's a lie to say that we are platform agnostic. It's a lie if I said that that banquet room is the ideal training space, but I'll make it work. I'm doing stuff in MS Teams next week. MS Teams doesn't have easy built-in breakout rooms, but there's a breakout room trick where you can pre-create breakout rooms in MS Teams. It's not great, but we made it work. With Bloomberg, they have an internal platform called Nexi, which they use. And we built a program on that. We did WebEx training where they only had audio. They didn't even have video dial in. And that's a nightmare, but you do the best you can with the environment you've got. If you have the luxury, Raihana, of being able to be like, I'm only using Zoom, then that is super awesome. And I totally support that, because I think Zoom is by far better in terms of pedagogy. But the reality is that I would be cutting off 40 to 50% of my client base if I made that hard line in the sand. I can nudge, I can create public programs where I demonstrate how well it works in Zoom. And so they get that, oh, wow, this is much better. But, you know, it's, if you've got the power, do it. If not, you know, do the training in that ugly, terrible hotel room that smells funny and has bad lighting. You make it work. That's WebEx training, by the way, if anyone didn't know.
Thank you. Then I have to look into that as well.
Yeah, no worries. I would say Zoom by itself is great. The one reason why we encourage people to use more than Zoom is because of, again, the visible thinking. And we'll look at that more on Thursday and Friday, but especially because people bring a lot of baggage when they come to Zoom. Now, the guy who wrote, Dan Rome, who wrote Back of the Napkin, he just uses Zoom, but he also uses physical worksheets that he sends people, and he has people sketching things out, holding them up. It's some way to get them away from just the Zoom platform of just plenary, breakout, discuss. If you get into that pattern, the brain gets tired of it too quickly. It's not just about getting tired of it. It is, though, about really creating much more meaningful content. Sorry, somebody came off mute, had a question.
Oh, it was me again. No, it's okay.
Yes, no, it's great to hear from you. What's up?
Hi. So you seem to know everything that I need to know. If I go on your website, the Knowmium website, do you have a list of, it's sort of a black hole of free things that I just kept clicking, which is awesome because I'm going to be with you all week. But is there a list? Awesome. I mean, I'm so psyched. Is there a list of reading that I can fast track, because I need to fast track my learning in creating a transition or transformation into the virtual world very quickly?
Yes. So the fast track version is, so as a note, almost everything's up on it. There's 10 more videos that I have to upload in the next 2 days, just because I got busy.
We get busy.
Yeah, we get busy, but it's almost up here. I'm screen sharing now. This is the actual Radically Remote course curriculum. And it's got an overview. It's got Radically Remote micro lessons, virtual don'ts, creating a sense of welcome, building beyond Zoom.
Amazing. Okay.
All that kind of stuff. This is the section, by the way, that's going to have 10 more. These are the interviews, including there's Dr. Linda Nilsson, Ann Benninghoff, a bunch of people. This will be more as well. My ATD talk is there if you can't go to the ATD thing. But down here, if you like Bob, because Bob is awesome and you want to see a lot, these are all the tools. That's Robert.
Okay.
How to use chat, how to use screen sharing, how to do Miro versus every single thing. There's an actual step-by-step through everything. That's all free. That's at radicallyremote.com. You can sign up now. Just be aware that we're adding a bit more this week. So you'll see more over the course of the week. But that's all up there. All of that can be accessed also via the Knowmium toolkit. There is a free book that we've written. It's a 134-page book.
I know, I downloaded it.
Oh, you downloaded it? Okay, cool, awesome.
Yes.
And there are all the activities you might want. So the same thing you would do at like Session Lab or Liberating Structures. We have a similar type of toolkit on the website. We'll be going through the other ones though on Thursday. That's Thursday.
Okay,
we still have 38 people here, so I'm guessing we have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
Goodness.
Excellent.
37.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Session.
This was great. See you next.
Yeah. Can you tell us the first time we ran it? I ran out of time at the end. That's okay. See, this is an area process. By the way, except for Friday session, which I've run a ton of times, all the sessions this week are the first time we're running them. So it's a lot of fun to see what runs out of time. It's an iterative process. Although Friday, it's going to be the first time I've run that session with 100 people. That's going to be interesting. I've usually run it with like 30 or 40. Note, best practice though, for an actual session with a client, 12 to 16 is recommended, or 8 to 16 is recommended for this. If you really want to create a beautiful, intimate space, that's truly what we recommend. We're just trying to get energy for a lot of people and get people to meet each other and do all that kind of stuff. Other questions? Who's got a question? Raise a hand or post the chat, yell. I see a hand raised, physical hand raised with a fan oscillating. You're on mute. Is that Francis?
Sorry.
Oh, that's not Francis. Sorry, that's Lewis. Hey, Lewis.
In your book, you have a diagram. It's a flow diagram in terms of the activity design.
Yeah, I can pull that up actually.
Yeah, how does that relate to the grid that you mentioned with the sticky notes? What's the relationship there?
Same exact thing. So that flow diagram is like the sticky notes, but on some of them I've expanded it out. So with a sticky note on Miro canvas, you can actually drag it to different shapes and sizes. So for example, if I've got a simulation that's a 15-minute simulation, that's 3 sticky notes.
Understand. Okay.
So it's the exact same thing. It's just how I always do a grid. I always do a grid because the grid keeps me honest. The grid is your best friend. Honestly, I think that's true with face-to-face as well, but especially with virtual where the time is more limited, thinking of how I want to do it, how I want to move from section to section, making sure I don't do too much like today.
Okay, cool, thanks.
No worries. Actually, is tomorrow the simulation one? Yeah, tomorrow's about simulations. For tomorrow, you're actually going to see the closest you'll actually see to what one of our real training is looking like, albeit not that this isn't a real training, but this is a large group session. It will be a large group tomorrow. I think we've got 97 or 98 signed up. But you're actually going to get to have that experience of going through simulations and having more time to debrief. It's going to be the best practices we talked about today in an actual physical session.
I have one more question. In your literature, you talk about sentiment analysis. I clicked on a couple of links like Tone Reader and the IBM machine.
Oh, Watson? Oh, that's
yeah. Do you use that?
Did I talk about that in the book? Or
no, but I searched your name and sentiment analysis.
Oh God, some of the old stuff that I was doing.
And it came out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I haven't.
Crystal, but some of the links.
Don't use Crystal. Crystal is
some of the links are dead. So how do you use that? What apps do you use for sentiment analysis right now for your text?
So good question. So the one that I'm using is actually, we're actually doing a collaboration with Cyrano.ai. Cyrano, like Cyrano de Bergerac. I'm pronouncing that completely wrong. Sorry, I just pronounced it wrong. I'm massacring Italian. And the reason why is currently it's free and builds right into Zoom. We also use Otter.ai, which also has some free stuff right now. So we use a mixture of those. So you'll actually see that if you're in the simulation session tomorrow, you'll see us not using the Serrano one because it's a huge group, but you'll probably see us using the Otter stuff. Otter does connect with the live stream.
Yeah.
But with Zoom 5.0, it's briefly gotten glitchy. Now, they are an approved app. They do partnerships with Zoom, so I'm sure that'll be fixed clearly. There is a workaround for it. It's either going to be a beautiful live stream or you'll see the workaround version tomorrow, one or the other. We use that for making visible conversations.
Sure.
I'll dive deep into what that actually looks like tomorrow. For actually measuring sentiment, Serrano is better because it's an actual organizational psychologist. Crystal knows it's more like a horoscope. I don't, the pedagogy behind that is questionable at best.
Okay, thanks Josh.
I love the way you're geeking out.
Oh yeah, I love tools. I love sentiment and like text analysis. Penbecker's Loop, which is linguistic word count inquiry. If you're actually at an academic institution, you can get an incredibly cheap version of it. If you're corporate, you have to pay for a ridiculously expensive version of it. But if you're academic, LIWC is a great tool for analyzing stuff. Loop, it stands for Linguistic Inquiry and Word Count. If you're on the academic side, get an academic version. It's super, super cheap. Relatively speaking, I think it's like, there's like a $20 and $100 version, I think. I know $100 doesn't sound cheap, but they charge like thousands for corporates to use it. Serrano, though, is free right now. Get Cyrano, de Bergerac, Cyrano, I think it's .ai. But it's a free add-on for Zoom. Get it, use it. Basically, it analyzes conversational engagement. I'm not saying you should use this in every session. I don't recommend that. It's good for particular topics. Like if we're doing some influence conversations, it can be useful for that. It's actually a lot more useful for coaching sessions. It's really good for coaching sessions via Zoom. I actually use Otter for large group sessions. I'm much more likely to use Otter and then manually tag it live because it's also creating that awareness. I don't rely too much on sentiment analysis in session for that reason, because I want to create human awareness, not AI awareness. We'll talk about that tomorrow, though. That's tomorrow's topic. Anybody else questions? Or you just want to hang out? I like hanging out with you.
Yeah,
You're all awesome human beings. Just chilling. Shunchek's just chilling. He's playing. Yeah, there's the Animal Crossing background.
Yeah, Isabella's sick today, so I'm taking over.
That is beautiful, Chunchek. I love that. Anybody else? Everyone else is just waiting to see if anybody else has questions.
Is there some kind of, sorry, Josh, is there some kind of rule of thumb of what to throw out in terms of your content? Because sometimes we have so much content, right? How do you think about that?
Chip and Dan Heath quote, it's better, it's the, he talks about with a jury, if you give a jury 10 things to remember, they're not going to remember any. So it's much better to have them remember 3 than forget 10. So basically we try to make, so I made a note, in 90 minutes to 2 hours, 3 things. It's really 3 frameworks, 3 points. You're spending at least half an hour to 40 minutes rotating around that, playing with it, trying it on. 3 is the maximum in a single session. Now you can have a series of sessions. Like for example, I have a negotiation program that we do with a client. It's normally like a 1 to 2 day session. We've broken it into 3 2-hour modules. So we're not trying to tackle too much all at once. And then anything that used to be like trainer talk type stuff, more of that, we push to the asynchronous. So we use, we actually do have, so for you guys, we've got Teachable. That's our public one. But for our clients, we also use a white label LMS that they can download to their phone as an app. And so in between sessions, the cohorts are doing stuff in there. So I could actually show you. I could show you what that looks like even. Maybe I've got it pulled up. I don't have to log in. So they're actually like, they're doing partner and pair work in there, which we're able to monitor. And that's, you know, quite powerful. Anybody else have awesome questions? And Lewis, don't be shy. Nobody else is asking any questions. So you are welcome to ask as many as you want.
Sure, thanks.
Joshua, you mentioned about, so I'm Michelle. You mentioned about having your participants doing like micro learning and stuff in between. Do you use your own platform for the micro learning, or do you use it on a third-party platform? And like, how does that work out eventually?
So our own platform. So with our clients, we use our own platform, which is based on the Matrix LMS, simply because it allows us to do a white label version that they can download as an app. The reason we do that is we work with a lot of finance clients, and how to put it, IT firewalls block a lot of external websites, but they don't block apps. So I would love to do everything honestly on Teachable or Thinkific, because even at $100 a month for like the really nice account, I can add unlimited users. The interface is so clean, so easy. Teachable does have a downloadable app, so we are thinking of potentially switching over to that. That would actually be my recommendation. But if your LMS is only browser-based, it's going to run into a lot of client issues with IT stuff. I can actually show you really quickly. So this is the browser version of some of the micro-learning. Oh, wow, I just pulled out that. Nope, come on. There we are. This would be like good to gravitas. This was an executive presence one. Now, this is a bit ugly looking because you're seeing my admin view. But what they're seeing is they've got their partner sessions, partner session 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they've got 5 of these sessions in between. Then there's a lot of bonus content here. This is optional. We're trying to entice them to look at it. But the main things that they're actually doing are these partner sessions. And it's a guided session that they're going through. So when they actually come into the session, again, they're not seeing it like that. They're just seeing the clean version. They get an actual video from me and it jumps in. And it's a 2-minute little intro to what they're doing. And then it's it's got the handout, the little pre-read, and then it's a guided conversation with their partner that they're actually doing. And then they have to report back on how they did in that conversation. You know, did they meet the objectives, this? So it's all tracked and monitored. And this way we're actually doing a good job of following through with them on it. So that's what we're doing. You could do this in Teachable. Teachable does have an app. Teachable is probably your best choice because it's got an app. And I can't say that enough. Otherwise, if it's browser-based, half your clients are going to block it. Apps are your friend.
Have you heard of Knobi?
I've heard of it. I haven't used it. The 3 main ones that are the open ones are Podia, Thinkific, and Teachable. Teachable, the reason we use them is because they've got the app. Thinkific still doesn't have an app. Podia, I just didn't like their interface. Knobi, what's your experience with that? I haven't used that one. I just know it.
I've not used it. I've used it from a user perspective. So I think it functions the same way as what you're sharing, like how you showed on your desktop earlier on. And I mean, it's enjoyable because it's micro learning, right? So every little thing is like a bite size that takes like 5 to 15 minutes to complete, right? And it gives quite a bit of gratification from the user perspective. Like, hey, I completed one module in like 15 minutes, and that kind of captures at least our younger generation, especially from your millennials onwards. So that's why, but the thing is, not many of us are using it yet, and I think also because the prices are quite high. I think for Knobi, the pricing is still quite high, and I was looking at Teachable and Thinkific as a web-based kind of platform. I didn't know that Teachable has an app version, so that's something perhaps to take a look at. But thanks for sharing.
No, thanks for sharing Knobi as well. We always like to share other options. So I completely agree with you. That's like, for example, the reason why we use Mentimeter as opposed to Slido. Mentimeter and Slido have essentially identical functions, but Slido is like 10 times the cost of Mentimeter without really adding a lot of extra functionality. So it's all about what does what we need it to do. And Mentimeter, one of my favorite tools also, you can put your slides up there, but you can also do polling and quizzes, all that kind of stuff. It's really good for gamification. We love Mentimeter. There's actually a tutorial on how to use Mentimeter in our free online thing here. There's Mentimeter for polling, and then there's a deeper dive into Mentimeter. Oh, right there, Mentimeter for slides, polling, quizzes, all that kind of stuff. So that is all in there. Oh, someone got kicked out and they're coming back in. That's fine. So yeah, so that's actually a great way for the breakout rooms. If you don't want to use a Zoom, you can actually manage it all technically through using Mentimeter. You can have your directions on there, and it's on their thing as well. It's another great way to do it. Knobi is great, but yeah, I think Knobi was quite a bit more expensive without not really offering an interface that was that much more. We've used a bunch of things, to be very honest, over the years. We play with everything. What were we using prior to Matrix? Do you remember, Robert? I've totally forgotten it. We used a different platform.
Loop.
Yeah, with 3 O's. We were using Loop, but then they massively increased their pricing module and annoyed the heck out of us. We tend to do things when they're new, and then they increase it. Teachable seems to have relatively arrived at their pricing model by now, and they're quite stable. So that's why we're sticking with them for now.
How do you feel about Ning?
Don't even get me started on Ning.
Quick question.
We used Ning before it was a network, before it was a social network, when it was just a play toy. Anyways.
Quick question.
Yes, Francis.
You mentioned Podia, and you mentioned that you didn't like the interface. 2 questions, actually. One, besides the interface, does it work well for you? And 2, what is it that you don't like about the interface?
You know, it's honestly, to some extent, sometimes people just go with their pure gut feeling. I wish I could give you a deeper dive than that. From a perspective of creating courses, I like the way that I'm able to mix different types of mediums, like PDF, followed by text, followed by an embedded quiz, followed by a video. I like the way that interface works in Teachable. By the way, I don't get anything if you use Teachable. Daniel Stillman, who is my facilitation masterclass guru, he uses Podia. All of his classes are run by Podia. So you can run incredibly successful ones via Podia. In our links, actually, I think we've got it up there. If not, Robert, can you remind me to add this if we don't have it? If you type in Daniel Stillman facilitation hats Podia, there's a free class from him on Podia that lets you try it out. If anyone wants to experiment with Podia, it's a great tool as well. His Podia class on facilitation hats, the different hats we wear, not literal physical hats, but the ones we wear as facilitators. It's a great little micro learning, and it's totally free. And it's on Podia. So it's just a personal thing. It's like, why do I prefer Miro to Mural? I like the interface better. It's just a personal gut feeling around it. I know a lot of people prefer Mural. Lewis?
Yeah, I noticed that you prefer Typeform as well as opposed to SurveyMonkey. Is there a reason for that?
It embeds cleanly and seamlessly into things better. SurveyMonkey, so like the way it moves from question to question is very conversational in Typeform. It's like super, super smooth. It's like, wow. SurveyMonkey to me is a fantastic tool. It's absolutely awesome, but to me, it just looks like a fancier version of Google Forms. Whereas the way Typeform interface, where it smoothly slides from question to question and manages it, I just like that. From a
it's
user
not
perspective.
because of the reporting, because I noticed when you look at Typeform, you have an overall report, right? The SurveyMonkey do that as well, or what?
Yes, you can get nice reporting on Google, whether you're using Google Forms or SurveyMonkey or Typeform. But with any of them, very honestly, you can get quite good reporting. At least for our purposes. Pardon?
How about JotForm?
I have not used JotForm. I know, so some of these I know their names, but I haven't used them. Typeform, from my perspective, is the gold standard now in terms of how it nicely moves from thing to thing. It just the way it flows. Typeform also, if you're more advanced, Typeform actually lets you do A/B routing. So, like for example, in the forms, I can create really intricate routing where if they answer this question, then it puts them. You can create choose your own adventures in Typeform. It's really elaborate, as well as allowing you to do uploads. Typeform also has a spin-off project called Video Ask, where it's actually video-based questions. That's really fun for pre-work, by the way. I'm using, for all my videos, I'm actually using something called Dub because it's incredibly cheap for my pre-work videos, but it also allows you to record video responses if I asked you a question. So I can actually get you to do video responses. Typeform has something called Video Ask, which is similar, that allows you to actually give video responses, and that can be nice to start an asynchronous dialogue. Just food for thought. We've played with that in previous courses. I know Lily has seen the Video Ask. I've used that in previous courses.
Hi, Leming here. Just one question. Any general guidelines on what should go asynchronous and what should be synchronous? Any just
general guideline is I don't want more than 3 to 5 minutes of trainer talk before I have people doing something. So it's if it's something where I want them interacting with it and it requires other learners to be there, where it's something collaborative, where I'm giving feedback on you, or we're brainstorming problem solving together, or we're debating something. Yes, there are ways to do that asynchronously. I mean, anyone who's been on Reddit knows that people can very well debate asynchronously, but it's much more meaningful from a collaborative perspective to have them doing that synchronously. So basically, what requires the learners to be there to have it get the best version of it? And if it doesn't require the learners to be there to do that, for example, if they're reading and responding to a document, if they're just doing reflective thought on something, a lot of that can be done as pre-work or post-work between the different modules. Although I never call it pre-work. I always call it starting the conversation, because they hear the word pre-work and then they just don't do it. So it's how do we start it's always, I always am trying to think of how can I make this meaningful? How can I make it so that this feels necessary? This feels like something I need to consider. And we do this with a lot of our Miro boards. The one we had, because this is a giant group session, we just really had a play space. But like, for example, I can pull up a Miro board in the background. If anybody else has questions, please feel free to ask while I
have a question to ask.
You bet.
Do you ever use kickoff sessions, like maybe a few days or a week in advance? And when you do that, what do you do? I see that you're nodding your head.
Yes. So if there is that fear, so when we're talking to our partners, if there's the fear that no one's going to do the pre-work, the best way to get around that is have everyone get it onto their calendar for 15 to 30 minutes and do a kickoff session. Basically, that's where my goal is to get them used to the technology, set expectations, do their very first little breakout. And that breakout is just the questions I would have been asking during pre-work. So it's a mixture of having fun with technical onboarding, just getting to play with it. Post a sticky. Your sticky should answer this question. Simple things like that. And then just getting them to dive deeper. Does that make sense?
Yep. I just wanted to see how somebody else would do it, because that's very similar to what we do.
And that's a great best practice. If you can't get your learners to do that themselves, then yeah, build it in face-to-face.
In my part of the world, pre-work is tough.
Completely understand. Whereas the funny thing is, if you talk to your clients and you're like, hey, how would you like to have an extra 30-minute kickoff session for free? Really what it is you're just helping yourself to make sure that everyone's on the same page when they go into session. That 30 minutes, yeah, it's for free, but it's making sure everyone's on the same page, making sure that you've been able to gather what their problems are, what their questions are. And that's on our checklist. We have on the checklist, how have you gathered their concerns and how have you brought that on board? So yeah, that 30 minutes is the greatest thing you can do if you can actually build in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
like for example, here's pre-work.
Yes.
Exactly. So synchronous pre-work is essentially what we recommend. Depending on your groups, like we have some where that's just not possible, which is why we do it asynchronously. But you know, I even to create ownership of it, if I know my list, I actually have the people here. Where here's your picture, here's the person. I've named them. You know, what's your experience? This is a sales program about virtual selling. And it's actually got just 4 little stickies. They're doing this asynchronously, but I could actually also get them doing it synchronously. So that would be an example. And then we actually use that and that goes into the program. We've still got 20 people in the room. It's hilarious.
Thank you.
And awesome. Thank you.
Wait, we were supposed to leave?
Yeah, 10 o'clock. But we said we're doing an AMA for half an hour or however long is necessary.
Well, Francis asked a real good question. So I'm Francis and Lewis asked a good question. So I'm here.
Oh, I
I'm
would
here
love
to
to
soak
spend
it up.
hours with you guys.
Josh, just one more. How do you track behavioral changes throughout the program? How do you ensure that there is some marked difference in the way they learn from a behavioral standpoint?
Good, extremely good question. So we do it at a couple different levels. I'm a big believer in, William Thalmeyer actually has great resources on this, which we link to in our toolkit. It's basically going beyond what people sometimes call smile sheets. We don't want to evaluate the wedding ceremony. We want to evaluate the marriage. Okay, so we want to evaluate the overall thing. Some people love Kirkpatrick. Some people hate Kirkpatrick. I don't come down on either side of those camps, but I do actually want to measure, but I also want to create ownership of the measurements with the organization and with the people themselves. So it's not just me externally playing cop here. It's building in at a number of different levels. So our follow through is usually at 3 different levels. It's the individual level using the app, using the toolkits, the resources there. It's the peer-to-peer level through accountability partners and follow-up groups. These could be in between sessions as well as after the session. And it's at the manager level where we've given them a coaching guidelines and a rubric for them to continue these conversations going forward. So basically, they're able to measure where are my people now? And I've gotten their self-assessments on the rubric. So where are you now? What's your current level of confidence? And then where did I get through? So my big belief is measuring it based on rubrics, measuring it based on behavioral competencies at the individual level, the peer-to-peer level, and the manager level. So it's those 3 conversations all based around a common framework, a common rubric. I can show you a really simplified one. Let me see if I've got this easily, if I can easily pull this up. Just a moment.
While you're doing that, Joshua, I've got to go. Thank you very much for an
No worries,
awesome
thank you.
session.
No worries,
Bye,
happy
everyone.
to.
I have a question, Joshua, and I want to know that the answer is yes. Did you purposely choose that background to coincide with your clothing?
Yes.
Dang. Okay, now I know what to do. Thank you.
All right, I'm pulling it up in the back. All right, there's a. So there's different levels of complexity. So for the face-to-face conversations, like we're doing a session where it has a bunch of mentor sessions coming out. So they've got a shared checklist. So this is for a presentation session. And these are the things that they're supposed to be doing: analyzing their audience, looking at how they're structuring their message, looking at how they're answering questions, and looking at their presence virtually. Then they're having these follow-up mentor or coaching conversations with their manager where they're actually checking them on all 4 of these things. So they're asking a series of rubric-based questions where they're analyzing them and seeing the change that's occurred. So we're looking at where were they before and where are they, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months after, and we're actually able to measure it based on that. Sometimes people they like to measure like how much did sales go up? How much did this go up? I understand the temptation to do that, but that might have nothing to do with your program. It's really too tricky. Very honestly, without being a cop-out thing, there are too many extenuating circumstances as to what could be going into that. Rubric-based stuff is previously they did not ask questions in their sales. Now they ask questions. Now they ask open questions. Now they ask follow-up questions. So looking at like these different things in a rubric, which of these things have they started to do, to what degree, based on their own self-assessment, their peer-to-peer assessment, and their manager assessment, how have they improved on that? That's how we measure things, because what we're focused on in general is on behavioral change around certain competencies.
So do you administer these surveys and assessments, or do the client do it themselves, or what?
50-50. It really depends what our partnership is with learning and development. We co-create them. So it's not just we're imposing this. We work with the participants. We work with the stakeholders to co-create them. Yes, there's a core template that we use depending on the topic, but then we customize and tailor that based on the reality that we're facing.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Great answer.
No worries. Measurement matters. My belief is competency-based measurement is the most meaningful. That's getting up to, it's getting somewhere in the Kirkpatrick level 4, however you want to define it. But I don't obsessively follow Kirkpatrick or Thallemeyer with his L-STEM methodologies. I tend to lean more towards his stuff. But to be honest, you can use either as long as you're actually measuring behavioral change. You're heading in a right direction. Not just how did I feel about this? And did I like Joshua? Suckling smile. That means you do. Yay. Good.
Thank you very much. I'm
no worries.
Gonna take off now.
Feel free. We're 38 minutes past the end of the session, so
all right,
extremely
bye,
feel free. Bye. Have wonderful days, mornings, evenings, nights, etc. Goodbye, Lily. If I didn't say goodbye to you, it's not because I don't like you. It's because I just can only see so many chats at once. Anybody else sticking around for more? We are doing another 3 sessions this week. Tomorrow's all about simulations. You'll get to see things tried on tomorrow, which is super, super fun. We're going to run you through some negotiation simulations and, depending on time, a collaboration simulation. It'll be super fun. So this is actually getting to try it on tomorrow. So we'll do a little bit about talking about how simulations work, but for the most part tomorrow, we're going to be actually doing it using what we consider to be best practices. Although I know my good colleague and friend Richard Clayton would say that the word best practice is verboten. We don't like that term. It's just evidence-based practices. Whether they're best or not, yeah, that depends on how we look at it. Yes, Lewis.
So
you said that was the last one. You lied to my face. I'm kidding, dude. No, we're happy to stay as long as you want. I hope
so
this feels welcome enough.
Think about like large group interventions. Do you do that collaboratively, like open space, or
I love open space. Yes.
How do you implement that in a wider, group? Is that something that you do?
Yes, I love doing open space. In fact, we're going to be doing a variation of open space on Friday. That's the whole methodology between. So that's the physical places and physical spaces and digital places. Or is it physical?
Yeah.
Whatever I wrote.
Right.
Anyway, the Friday class. So yes, we use the co-host trick, or we use other things like we can use. There's a couple different technologies we can use. We can use a Remo or an AirMeet if it's a huge group, which allows people to move from table to table. That's more for conference level events. We can use the co-host trick where I elevate you all to co-hosts. That allows you to move from group to group. Or I could actually embed a video board using like Jitsi, which is an alternative video platform. I can embed that directly into a Miro board or a mural and have people actually have that pop up on them. We'll be trying that out on Friday. Full confession, because we've got 100 people coming Friday, that's going to be interesting in terms of getting that to work.
Okay. Cool.
I guarantee things are going to break Friday, but it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
All right.
Friday, I'm going to be using also an AirMeet or a Remo as well, just because we got a huge group.
What does ATD use for your conferences? Huh? What is your platform?
They use something called Social 27. It is very much a conference platform. How to put it? We're sponsors this year, so we get to hear the back channel conversations. They are not entirely happy with their platform. There are some things I really love about it, but they are definitely the internal word. Bianca Clivio, who's running all the liaison stuff, she's like, let's just say that things were promised that do not work as well as they said they would.
Okay.
Now, some things are actually working quite well. Some things are working quite well, but in the ATD conference, other stuff, so-so.
Yeah, I think
Bye, Alejandro.
Yeah, networking would be difficult, right? I think that's why Remo, I think, is quite interesting in that sense.
Remo and AirMeet. So if anybody's looking at Remo, I'd suggest using AirMeet as well, because right now AirMeet is free. It's like Remo, but free.
Oh, okay.
Although I should be propping up Remo because it's a Hong Kong-based company. AirMeet is Bangalore-based, but they do extremely similar things. They have slightly different feature sets, but they're almost the same. Do try out AirMeet if you want to play around with it. It's another free option that does the same damn thing.
Capacity for that, the max for that, do you know?
Well, that depends who you ask.
Okay.
AirMeet, so I was in a demo with them. They said, oh, we have unlimited capacity. We could do up to 1 million live. I'm like, bullshit. Sorry, apologize for my language. No, but large numbers. They are optimistic about their ability to do very large sessions. My Zoom account here, I did actually book up to the large session one, so we can do up to 500. I don't recommend that. I love doing sessions of like 12 to 16 for a workshop, but we do large sessions because we do a lot of partnerships with CFA Institute. So I'm on their speaker hub. So I go around to like large groups where they're doing big conference events of like 300 to 1,000. We're very able to do interactive sessions. It's a different kind of interactive session. As you saw today, it's very different. Like what you and I and what we're doing right now, we've got 10 people in the room. There we are. This is a workshop. Yeah. This is what an actual, that's that 12 to 16. And you can see instantaneously the dynamic totally changes. Yeah. But they're both valuable. They both serve their purpose.
Sure.
You have to rely a lot more on your learners in the larger group sessions. I mean, that's not our topic today. We're not talking about large group versus small group, but with large group sessions, you need to scaffold and framework, make everything 10 times simpler, rely on your producers like Robert, potentially have multiple producers if it's a really big session. Like normally with over 100, I would have 2 or 3 producers floating from group to group. We could do that today. Yes, Sukling, what's up?
Yes, I have experienced the breakout room session, not only with you, but with some other speakers as well. I have a question. If the participants, you have a variety of participants, some younger ones probably can follow up with the technology better or follow the session better than some slower one. So what do we do if certain participants are not able to catch up in the breakout rooms? And how do we know as a trainer, how do we know?
So 2 answers, actually 3 answers to that. One is it's partially that pre-session stuff. So having either a kickoff call if you want to do it synchronously with trainer help, or having at least the canvas open where people can play with the technology. 2 is I do rely, if I've got different ability demographics within there, I actually in the pre-work, I have people self-tag. What I mean by self-tagging, having people self-tag is what's your level? Oh, we've got someone joining now. That's fine. I have people self-tag their ability, and I make sure when I'm sorting the groups that I have someone who's self-tagged as I'm pretty damn comfortable with this. I make sure we have at least one of those in each group so that they can, use their expertise, do a little bit of reverse mentoring. They can help their group if their group gets stuck. So I'll say, like, if Lewis has tagged that he understands Miro, I've got at least, a 6-7 comfort level. I'm like, Lewis, in your group, you're the Miro expert. If people get stuck, I'd like to ask you to help them in that, actually.
And how do you determine how long a breakout session should take? Like, you mentioned 9 minutes, 14 minutes?
No, it really depends on what we're trying to have them do. Yeah. So like, for example, in these dialogues that I do, a program I do that I'm a participant in, that Richard and Oscar runs, they have 20-minute breakouts discussing 2 to 3 core questions. If I'm doing a simulation, it might be 15 to 20 minutes. You'll see tomorrow, if you're in that session tomorrow, we'll be doing actually a number of 15 to 20-minute breakouts. And that's fully intentional that we want it to be that long. So it really depends. I will also, for prep work, if I'm like prepping a negotiation simulation, and you'll see this tomorrow, we're actually going to have breakouts where it's a prep breakout. So literally you'll have 10 minutes in a breakout where you're just reading through this little simulation thing, and you're actually getting to prepare together for it before you actually come back and go into a breakout. Does that make sense? So it depends on what you're having them do.
Yeah. So because I'm thinking, what will be the ideal time for each breakout session? Ideal as in minimum and the maximum.
Oh, Ooh, that really, so short version is think about your face-to-face and add about 30 to 40% time on top of that. Don't double it, but add a good, so if it's normally a 15-minute face-to-face activity, that's going to be 20 to 25 minutes virtually, just very honestly, in terms of the transitions and doing all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'll do breakouts sometimes where it's really, I like to do speed rounds. I don't do that with a group of 70 people because it just gets too complicated. But in a smaller group, I'll do speed round breakouts where I'm like, all right, you got 4 minutes with your partner. These 3 quick questions, bam, 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 knock them out. So sometimes we'll intentionally put the speed pressure on, but we always are doing that consciously, not accidentally.
Thank you.
Awesomeness. So I saw someone just joined now. So thanks for joining. So they've labeled themselves Jay. Welcome on board, Jay. So the session actually finished 47 minutes ago. This is just the Q&A afterwards. We had 83 people, I think, max. Now we're down to the core 10 who still have questions. Anybody else questions before we kick on off?
Joshua, just a quick question, might not be totally related to the session today,
No,
but
that's totally fine.
I'm just observing like how you've been pretty much sharing and stuff like that. A lot of the things that you're doing or you've tried is really coming from a very experimental state of mind, isn't it? Like it's just the attitude that you have behind just trying and experimenting for you to get to where you are today. So I think I'm just asking this question like just for us to also have that perspective, because I think a lot of us think that we go into a training and we must be professional, we must have it on T and there's no screw ups and no, but I find that your approach seems to be different in that way.
Yeah, my phrase, I wrote about that, I think in chapter 2 of Radically Remote, give yourself permission to be in beta. So it's things are going to break virtually. Just be very transparent about it. At the same time, when I'm doing an actual client session, I'm much more obsessive about making sure. Now, Robert's actually sat in on them. We've gone through everything to make sure it's not going to break. This is designed to be, these are giant group sessions we're doing today. It's designed to be a play space for everyone to get to experiment and think about these things. That's not saying that nothing breaks in my real sessions. It does. You just have to lean into it, going that. The one thing you don't want people pushing back is pushing back against the technology. So you've got to either have a kickoff session, you've got to, or at least get them all to have done the pre-session conversation stuff, because otherwise they're pushing back against the technology. You want the technology to be disappearing, to have created a muscle memory at least, where it doesn't take people 20 minutes to find a sticky note in a Miro platform. Yeah. So it's so that's really critical, or not use it. Now I know the temptation then is to not use it. My goodness gracious, the abilities that come from having a canvas. Now, Scott Dutton, who was in the session today, he uses Jamboard. That's a Google one. It's like, how to put it, idiot-proof version of Miro, but with way fewer features, So I like Miro because I think it's simple enough that after about 15 minutes of playing with it, people get the features we need them to get. Again, I always do that in pre-work. And Jay, don't worry that you missed it. We recorded it. So we'll be sending out the recording with the entire session. So you get to see all of our mistakes for the last 2 hours. It'll be good fun. But does that answer your question, Michelle? Cool. Lewis, I love your fan, by the way.
Thanks. So how did you get here? I mean, just give us a bit about your background. How did you arrive? I'm sure you did this before COVID, you know?
So yes, virtual we've been doing for, so full confession, my master's in 2006 in science of education, my thesis was around blended learning, flipping classrooms. So I've been, I was a keynote speaker. So back when I was on the academic side, when I was faculty at like Yonsei University, Pearson Longman, I did keynote speeches for them at academic conferences, all about flipping classrooms. So preaching about moving stuff online, synchronous, asynchronous, I have been doing that a long time. However, the first time I ever used a Miro board was 3 months ago. The first time I ever used Zoom for this was like 5 or 6 months ago. So a lot of these tools, I'm not like far ahead. This is not, he must have been using Miro board. Now, I learned from people who have. Eva, who does her stuff on Mural, she does design thinking in this. She has a bunch of free sessions as well. She's been using Mural for 7 years. She's one of the original like beta testers of it. Some of the stuff we've been using since beta with some of the products we're talking about here. Other stuff, we haven't been using it that much longer than a lot of people.
But on your toolkit, you have a whole bunch of activities. Obviously, you have experimented with that, right? And tried that. How long have you been doing that?
Some things a long time. So I've been training for like facilitating training for like and teaching for like 15, 16, 17 years. That toolkit, so the book and the toolkit, we didn't actually have that on the website until we put that together in 3 weeks. So that was, the book was written in 3 weeks. Robert is the heavy lifter on the toolkit. I don't want to take claim for that. The toolkit was put together all in 3 weeks. Now, that's not saying that these were ideas that only existed for 3 weeks.
And
it was based on, we're still
sorry,
adding stuff.
we're still doing it too. We keep adding more and more as we find them and create them.
Yeah, the Radical Toolkit continues to be updated. Radically Remote, it's on version 2 right now. Version 3 will probably be up next month. Not huge changes to it, but based on everything we've been seeing over the last couple of months, we'll be updating and adding to it. It's always, it's an iterative process. So yes, some of the stuff it's relying on stuff that we've done for years. Like there's an activity in there, Terrible Presence, which I love to the end of the earth. One of my very favorite activities ever. I've been doing that activity for a decade. Why? Because it's hilariously funny. It makes a point and it works every single time, whether it's face-to-face or virtual. And it doesn't take a long time. It's 10 minutes.
Thanks.
No worries, Lewis. Simple activity, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. It would be, all right, Suckling, Lewis, you're in a group together. You got to think of a present for the other person, but it can't be a good present. It has to be a terrible one. Think of it. You write it down. All right, now you're going into that group. You have 3 minutes to pitch them this. You have to sell them this present and convince them that this is the most wonderful thing ever. But it's all about thinking about our audience, their needs, how this would benefit them. You can take, it's so much fun. I love that activity.
Fun, sounds fun.
Yeah, it's not, other people have done variations on it, but it's the one that we do. But that's one example. We've been doing that for a decade. It's so much fun.
Thanks, Joshua.
No worries, Suckling. See you later this week.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Anybody else questions before we bounce on off? I'm going to go get myself some lunch. Actually, breakfast.